Hi, over the next few minutes we're going to be telling the story of Fountains Church Bradford, where we've been, where we are and where we're going. So many of the stories of Jesus happened whilst they were on the road to somewhere. And this is the story of our journey and how we're meeting God on the way.
In around 2016, Toby Howarth and Andy Jolly, the Bishop and Archdeacon of Bradford, began to dream about a city centre resource church. This was part of a wider Church of England initiative to plant new churches on estates, in towns and villages, and particularly in city centres. Bradford has this incredible heritage, and part of the city's founding story is a group of dreamers who believed that things could be different. Many of these were deeply committed disciples of Jesus. To this day, our city remains a hub for innovation and change makers. Across England, 1.7% of people attend an Anglican church. In Bradford, that drops to 0.6%, nearly a third of the national average. The reasons for this are complex, but definitely part of that reason is the lack of investment. The investment that's being made in Fountains begins to establish that balance again.
A large grant from the Strategic Development Fund of the Church of England was given to us as a church and pays for the funding over 5 years, which tapers during that period, all in the hope of a sustainable future as we go forwards together. This building was purchased with help from the Leeds Diocese, and this building in Glidegate, adjacent to the Alhambra and the Media Museum, it took a long time to get, and when we got it, it was in a real state, much worse than we had hoped. The building had been abused by drug dealers and users, particularly heroin. We'd uncovered way over 100 kilograms of needles from the building, which gives a picture of a little of what the state of the building was in. Literally all we had was a shell. Everything had been gutted out. And that was a reminder to us that amongst the beauty of Bradford, like many cities, there is also real brokenness.
The building has definitely been an important part of our journey, but even more important have been the lives that we've begun to see that have been transformed. Our journey began back in 2019 as we began to worship and pray together in the house next door, the building next door, Glide House. We were really quite excited to discover that that was actually the Sunday school of a really large church that used to be on this plot of land itself. We then led a bit of a nomadic existence across the pubs and clubs of the city centre. Like most people, we didn't have a coronavirus plan in our bag, so we had to move everything online. Before, in 2020, we were able to begin to worship again. Our building still wasn't ready, and so we met outside.
In November 2020, we finally got keys to the building, of which we inhabited phase 1, an auditorium and cafe space and kitchen. And then over the next few months with phase 2, we now have a food store in the building and a multifunctional space for children on Sundays and midweek groups. In the Old Testament, there's a story in the book of Jeremiah when God's people move into exile to the city of Babylon. As you can imagine, there's a lot of fear and anxiety as how the people of God should position themselves amongst this foreign people group. The Lord speaks to them through the prophet Jeremiah to seek the peace and prosperity, the welfare of the city, saying that within the welfare of the city, within its destiny, is also wrapped up the welfare, the peace, prosperity, and the destiny of the people of God. And that's what we want to do, be with the city of Bradford, to seek the blessing, the prosperity, the peace, the welfare of our city. We want to be people that big up Bradford, that bless Bradford, and that say to a wider audience, as wide as we can find, that Bradford is beautiful.
We're passionate about learning what it means to follow Jesus in the 21st century. What would Jesus say to us today? How would he teach us to live? How would he help us to live out those great commandments of loving God and loving our neighbour in a world that's now full of social media and mass marketing? So what can our faith teach us about to handle the challenges of mental health? How do we make sure that in this world that sometimes seems full of injustice, like racial intolerance, how do we keep our hearts pure and free from cynicism? How ought we, as Jesus' disciples or apprentices, live in ways that combat racism and economic injustice? In an increasingly polarised political landscape, what does it mean to befriend people who think differently to me? Jesus is the master teacher of all of these things, and we seek to live like him. We meet every Sunday to worship, to pray, and to study the Bible together. On Saturdays, we gather and express the very simple truths of the good news of Jesus told in the four Gospels as central to our Christian faith, and we do that gathered around food. In fact, most of what we do gathers around food from Grace Kitchen, where we intercept food from places that would be throwing food out and turn it into amazing meals where we can gather together and discuss and talk and build community.
Jesus often demonstrated how children could grasp the message of God's love, sometimes better than adults. And we love seeing the children in our community growing and discovering the love of God and the plans he has for their lives. During the coronavirus pandemic, I think we, like lots of people, sensed a rise in anxiety and mental health. And seeking to speak to that need, we've started a number of support groups, Kintsugi Hope, Renew Wellbeing and Keys to Freedom. All of these held within a safe and supportive environment that we can think, how can our faith and other tools help us with issues of mental health? We want to play our part alongside those who are seeking to bless Bradford. We are fully behind Bradford's bid to become City of Culture 2025. We think too, this is Bradford's time, and we pray that we can see it happen. We're up for partnering with anyone of any faith or of none, with those that want to bless Bradford, big up Bradford, and to proclaim Bradford as beautiful.
As well as playing our role within the wider development of the city centre, we really hope that, like fountains, other churches might spring up across the city, supported by what started here, whether that is a new church or whether it's supporting churches that already exist. We walk into the future praying that Fountains will continue to grow as a people who worship God in word and action, who extend the welcome of Jesus, creating a place of belonging, and in a multitude of different ways, bless Bradford.